Hello everyone, happy science time and welcome back to our to another video about force, motion, and energy. I welcome you to our second lesson for this unit, and we are going to be talking about the properties of electromagnetic waves. So let us start now. So to begin with, let us have first our I can statement. So as you can see here in the image, we have an I, and then a can, and the statement. So these are the objectives of our lesson. So our first I can statement, at the end of this lesson, I can compare the relative wavelengths, frequencies, and energies of the different types of electromagnetic waves. So we're going to be doing a lot of comparison between the wavelengths, the frequencies, and the energies. These are the properties of electromagnetic waves, no? So how are they related to one another? Ano ba yung kinalaman ng isa't isa sa bawat isa? Okay, for our second I can statement, I can solve problems involving wavelength, frequency of electromagnetic waves. So there is a little bit of mathematical thing here in this lesson, but basic mathematics lang to, kaya kayang-kaya nyo to. So we're gonna be computing for the wavelength, for the frequency, and actually for the speed din ng electromagnetic waves. And finally, I can explain the relationship between frequency, wavelength, and energies of the different colors under the visible light. So kanina, properties of the electromagnetic waves. This time, for the third I can statements, we're going to be comparing then the properties of the different colors under the visible light. So let us start. Okay, in lesson 1, you learned that electromagnetic waves are actually composed of electric field and magnetic field. Kaya nga siya tinawag na electromagnetic waves. It's because it is a combination of electric field and magnetic field. At sir, paano po nabubuo itong electric field and magnetic field na to? It's because of the accelerating charged particle. So it could be a proton or an electron. So kapag nag-accelerate sila or bumilis yung takbo nila or yung motion nila, so there's an acceleration. So there could be a production of electric field and magnetic field. And sabay po silang napoproduce and in a perpendicular manner. So parang yung nakikita nyo dito sa GIF na to. So we have here the electric field, yung color red, nakatayo siya, and the magnetic field, yung blue. So arrange siya 90 degrees doon sa electric field. So that is the electromagnetic wave. Kaya siya tinawag na electromagnetic wave because it's a wave, no? And then the question now is, what do we know about waves? So let us talk about waves. So ano nga ba ang properties ng waves? So first of all, waves carry or transmit energy. So itong waves na to, whatever waves we're talking about, kaya show water waves yan or seismic waves yan from the ground, no? Or sa loob ng earth, or whatever wave we're talking about, they always carry or transmit energy. Same as electromagnetic waves, no? Electromagnetic waves have the capacity or capability of carrying or transmitting. So we're gonna be using the term transmitting energy. So nakakapagpadala siya ng energy. That is why napakaraming tulong or gamit nitong electromagnetic waves. So ang electromagnetic waves para siyang messenger. So tagadala siya ng information, ng message, or ng energy. And waves have different parts. So as you can see here, we have a diagram of a wave. So the highest part of a wave, this one, okay, this one, that's the highest part of the wave, we call it the crest. Okay? And this one here, ito yung may number 4, that we call it the trough. Okay? So highest part is the crest, the lowest part is the trough. Now, in this diagram of the wave, you can see two crests. So this is crest letter A and crest letter B. So if we're going to measure the distance between these two crests, we call it the wavelength. Okay? Oops. Wave length. Now, wavelength, guys, is symbolized by a Greek alphabet or Greek letter known as lambda. So lambda is the symbol for wavelength. Okay? So usually, it is measured in meters or simply M, no? So we measure it using meters. So we measure ilang metro ba yung layo ng isang crest to another crest, or it could also be what is the measurement or the distance between one trough to another trough. So that is the same as as the distance between one crest to another crest or to the next crest. So we call it the wavelength. Okay? Now, those are the some of the most important parts, or yeah, some of the most important parts of a wave that are very much related to our lesson, which is the properties of electromagnetic waves, no? So meron na tayo nakuhang isa, and that is the wavelength. So wavelength is the measurement between one crest and the next crest, or between one trough and the next trough, or we can say that's the measurement or the distance between one wave to another wave. Now, there's another property which we call the frequency. Okay? So, frequency naman is the number of waves or crests or troughs, or we can simply say the number of waves passing through a single point at a given time. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? To elaborate, let us have an example here. I want you guys to count the number of crests or the number of waves that will pass through this area, this line here, etong line na to. I want you to count the number of waves that will pass through that line in 10 seconds. Okay? So, yung bilang ng waves na dadaan dyan sa loob ng 10 seconds, that is what we call the frequency. Okay, so let us start. 3, 2, 1, count. Alright, so sa loob ng 10 seconds, if you counted 5, then you're correct. So there are 5 waves na dumaan, or 5 waves na dumaan sa loob ng 10 seconds, no? So the frequency of this wave is known as 5 waves per 10 seconds, or in mathematics, kapag may per or nakakita kayo ng ganyan, we call it, we use the operation of division, no? So we divide them. So 5 divided by 10 is simply 0.5. Okay? And then, since we are using mathematics already here, we're going to be using a symbol. So imbes na the entire frequency yung susulat mo, we can use simply small f to represent frequency. Sir, do we have to write waves per second? Yes, pero medyo mahaba siya. That is why we use another unit of measurement for here. So kung kanina sa wavelength we use meters, this time for frequency, imbes na waves per second, we can simply say 0.5 hertz. Okay? In honor of the scientist Hertz na napag-aralan nyo last lesson. One of those who contributed to the development of electromagnetic theory. So imbes na waves per second, we can simply say 0.5 hertz, or F is equal to 0.5 Hz. Para mas mabilis, no? Para mas maikli siya. So 0.5 hertz. So anong ibig sabihin yan? That means that in 1 second, sa loob ng 1 segundo, may kalahating wave ang dumadaan dito sa area na to. Kalahati, 0.5. So that is the frequency, guys. Okay? So nakakadalawa na tayo. We have wavelength and frequency. So wavelength is measured using meters, and then frequency is measured using hertz, or waves per second. So an electromagnetic wave can be represented by this picture, which we call the electromagnetic spectrum. So the electromagnetic spectrum shows the types of electromagnetic waves, no, based on the properties na pinag-usapan natin kanina. So based on their wavelength and their frequency. Okay? So dalawa na po yung napag-usapan natin, wavelength and frequency. So kung pagbabasihan natin yon, we can divide the entire electromagnetic waves into different types, no, which we call the electromagnetic spectrum. So as you can see here, we have different types here. First is the radio wave. We also have the microwave, the infrared, the visible light, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma rays. So let us study the wavelength first, and then the frequency of these waves. As you can see here in this representation of the electromagnetic spectrum, so we have here the radio, the microwave, infrared, visible, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma ray. Let us talk about the wavelength first. Okay? So wavelength here is measured of course in meters. So ito po yung sukat ng wavelength, yung haba ng one crest to another crest or to the next crest ng radio wave, microwave hanggang kay gamma ray. So let us start with radio wave. Sabi dito, let me change the color. Sabi po dito, a radio wave has 10 exponent 3 meters per second. Meters. A radio wave has 10 exponent 3 meters of wavelength, which means that it has just 1 with 3 zeros meters of wavelength. So kung i-measure natin yung distance from one wave to another wave ng radio wave, ang sukat po nun ay 1 kilometro or 1,000 meters. But as you go to the right of this electromagnetic spectrum, if you go to the right, or as we go to the right part of the electromagnetic spectrum, let us talk about the microwave now. The microwave has 10 exponent negative 2 meters. So that means that it has 0.01 meter of wavelength. So biglang yung sa radio wave kanina 1,000 meter, ang layo ng one wave to another wave. But for microwave, 0.01 meter na kaagad siya. Ganon ka-ikli yung layo ng one wave ng one crest to or one wave to the next wave. Paano pa sa infrared? So infrared has 10 exponent negative 5. It's the same as 0.4 zeros 1 2 3 4 1 meters. Okay? And so as a visible light, 10 exponent negative 6. Ultraviolet, 10 exponent negative 8, X-ray, 10 exponent negative 10, and gamma ray has 10 exponent negative 12 or 0.11 zeros 1 meter. So sobrang liit na po nun ng layo ng mga wave sa isa't isa pagdating kay gamma ray. So yun po yung pinagbasihan nila para mahati nila yung electromagnetic spectrum into these 7 types of electromagnetic waves: radio, micro, infrared hanggang kay gamma ray. First is the radio wave. So tandaan, as you go along to the right side, mas umiikli po yung wavelength ng mga different types of electromagnetic waves. Okay? Now, what about the frequency? Let us talk about the frequency here. So let us start with the radio wave. Again, frequency is the number of waves passing through a point at a given time. So ilang waves ba yung dadaan, for example, dito sa area na to sa loob ng 1 second? So that is hertz, no? Waves per second. So for radio wave, meron po tayong 10 exponent 4. So that is 1 with 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. 10,000 hertz. So sa loob ng 1 second, kahit na 1 kilometro yung layo ng one wave to another wave ng radio wave, sa loob ng 1 second, nakakadaan po ang 10,000 na piraso ng wave na yon. But again, as we go to the right side, you will notice that the frequency increases, no? So the frequency of microwave is 10 exponent 8, or simply 1 with 8 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is 100 million hertz, no? Or 100 million na piraso ng wave ang dumadaan sa loob ng 1 second. So ganun karami. That is the frequency of microwave. Paano pa kaya yung gamma ray? It has 10 exponent 20 or 1 with 20 zeros. I can't write it down here, no? But imagine niyo kung gaano karaming waves ang dumadaan sa loob ng 1 segundo kay gamma ray. Okay? So, to wrap it up, guys, let us talk about the relationship between wavelength. Okay, this is wavelength and frequency of the electromagnetic waves, or of the different types of electromagnetic waves in the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so you notice, guys, let me try another color. You notice, guys, that for the wavelength, as you go to the right, what happens to the wavelength? It decreases. Nakita nyo naman dito, this is one wave, this is one wave. Nakita nyo po yung layo nila sa isa't isa. For radio wave, ang laki. Diba? So 10 exponent 3 or 1,000 meters nga. So the wavelength here, to the right side, is still high. But as you go to the right side of the electromagnetic spectrum, ang nangyayari po sa wavelength, paikli ng paikli. Okay? So here, and then here, hanggang sa umabot po tayo dito kay gamma ray, no? So, longer wavelength sa left side ng electromagnetic spectrum, but as you go to the right, the wavelength becomes shorter. So, umiikli ng umiikli yung wavelength. Now, let us talk about the frequency. Let me use another color here. Let me try green. For the frequency, guys, let's start again with the radio wave. So you can say that the frequency or the number of waves that is passing, or the number of waves that is passing through an area at a given point of time for radio wave is lower, no? So lower ang frequency ng radio wave. As you can see here in this image, no? 10,000 hertz lang. But as you go to the right, naging 100 million siya, tapos naging 10 exponent 12, 10 exponent 15, hanggang 10 exponent 20. What happens to the frequency as you go to the right? Simply, the frequency becomes higher, no? Mas mataas po yung frequency as you go to the right side of the electromagnetic spectrum. So the radio wave has the lowest frequency, while the gamma ray has the highest frequency. So ang tawag po natin sa relationship ni wavelength and frequency is an inverse relationship. Okay? So we call it inverse relationship. Ibig sabihin ng inverse relationship, baligtad, no? Baligtad po. If the wavelength here is high or long, mahaba, the frequency is low. Mababa lang po yung frequency, yung dami ng waves na dumadaan. Okay? But here, if the frequency here is high already, the wavelength naman po ang bumababa. So, baliktad. Kaya siya tinawag na inverse relationship. Baliktad. As one variable increases, the other one decreases. Or as one variable decreases, the other one increases. So, that is the relationship between wavelength and frequency.